Today's video is about my GV11 Plus. The GV11 is a boat that I built in 2002 from plans I got from Bateau.com. I modified the boat, make it longer and a little higher, and the result was that it actually is 12 feet long instead of 11. That's why I call it the Plus version. The boat didn't start out to be as it looks today, but rather went through a series of changes over several years. So this video is about how all those changes came about and why. And to really start understanding the GV11, we have to go back to the boat before that, which was an Avon Rover 3.4 meter, an inflatable boat that I had all during the 1990s. We used the Avon for fishing and exploring in lakes and rivers. We even took it out into the ocean a couple of times. It's a very stable boat, and it folds up nicely, and we carried it in the back of the truck or in the car. In 1999, we got a travel trailer, and I made a rack to carry the Avon fully inflated on the back of the pickup. This worked very well for a couple of years. But then I began to feel that this boat was too small. We really needed something bigger. The Avon was very safe, but it's not very comfortable. And you ride close to the water, so it tended to be a rather wet ride. So I started thinking of getting something bigger. So I looked around for different boats, a larger inflatable RIBs. I looked at some fiberglass hulls and aluminum hulls and even wood hulls. I finally came across the Bateau.com website where they offered plans to help you build your own boat. And ultimately I selected the GV11 because it had one important feature, and that was it had the exact same dimensions as the Avon. It was the same length, it was the same width, and it even has the same weight. It was obviously an attempt to produce a wooden version of the Avon Rover that I liked so well. Now I want to talk a little about the design of the boat. The term GV, the G stands for Garvey. It's a Garvey type hull, which really means that it's the kind of rounded bow with a flat spot in front. You might think of it as the pointed bow boat with a couple of feet cut off. It's more complicated than that to get the shape on that, but it is a general class of hull, as Garvey hulls. The V stands for a V bottom. A Garvey can be flat bottom or V bottom. This boat happens to be a V bottom. I think that gives a little better ride. The construction is called stitch and glue. That's where you take plywood sheets and you put them together around a simple frame. You tie the pieces together with zip ties, and then you use epoxy and fiberglass tape to seal up all the joints. And once you finish that all off, it becomes a very sturdy and very lightweight hull. The material I used here on mine was Hydrotech. It's a marine plywood. It's a mahogany marine plywood. This is the first version of the GV11. It's a little longer, as I said. It's also a little wider and has a little more freeboard. It's got a 15-horse Johnson two-stroke on it, short shaft. The seating is tandem, that is fore and aft. I sit in the rear seat and I steer with the stick, which is that stick steering, which is the knob on the right.
and I could reach the throttle and shift behind me. Now, the boat ended up being a little heavier than the plans. In fact, the plans say it should weigh 105 pounds. Because of all the things that I added to it, it weighed double that. So I ended up being forced to get a trailer. And I did buy a utility trailer that was mostly aluminum, and I assembled that. And that's what I used for this version.
Version 1 of my GV11 Plus didn't get used very long. I just used it for a couple of months, and then I realized I really didn't like the tandem seating arrangement. It just wasn't working for us. So after some experiments to be sure that it could happen, I changed to a side-by-side seating arrangement. That meant I had to modify the middle and the aft seats in the boat in order to accomplish this. But when I did, it looked like this.
This then is the version 2 of the GV11 Plus. I now have 2 comfortable seats on the aft frame, and the middle frame has been converted to a full seat, cross seat with cushions on top. Otherwise, the hull is the same as it was for version 1.
Version 2 for the boat was changing the seating arrangements, but there was more going on at that time than just the boat work. One of the reasons that I had built the GV11 in the first place was to use it in place of the Avon when we were camping with the trailer. It was a boat to be taken with us when we traveled. But after the GV11 was built and it turned out to be quite a bit heavier, I ended up with using a trailer. So that meant I didn't really have a way to take the GV11 with us, with a trailer, travel trailer, and a boat trailer. So I considered this for some time, and what I created was a way to piggyback the boat and trailer on the back of my pickup. And so the pictures that you're about to see is how I worked that out.
The rig I made of both wood and steel, had an electric winch to help load the boat up onto the rig and to unload it. There were long ramps that stored on the rack, and by having the boat up there, it gave me the ability to tow the travel trailer at the same time I was carrying the boat and its trailer. This is what the rig looked like when it was all together. I used a Hensley Arrow weight distributing hitch, which was extremely good, and locked the trailer and truck together in a way that prevented trailer sway. Altogether, this rig weighed just over 14,000 pounds, used to refer to it as 7 tons of camping fun. Here are a few photos from camping at Eagle Lake in Northern California. We have the travel trailer, the boat and trailer, and we would go fishing and staying in the trailer. It was very nice and comfortable.
Well, you've seen versions 1 and 2. Versions 3 and 4 are actually the same design concept in 2 parts. The reason I separate them is because there are 6 years in between them. And I got a lot of use out of version 3 before I changed it to version 4. So what happened from 2 to 3 is I had been working with this boat for some years now, and it occurred to me that the hull design was a lot like a boat that I was very fond of, the Glassbar G3 ski boat. And I thought that with some modifications I could make it look something like the G3. The first change I decided to do was to add sponsons. Sponsons are a very distinct feature of the G3, and I thought they would be the hardest thing to do, so that's what I did first. So coming up is the sequence of how I built the sponsons. So let's go forward in time. It's been 6 years since I finished the version 3 build, and in that time I've sold the travel trailer, I've taken that piggyback rack off my pickup, and we're using the boat, but we're towing it around on its own trailer. So at that point in time I started thinking I had no real weight or length limits, so I started thinking about a bigger boat. But then I had this nagging thought. I'd made a promise to myself back when I did version 3 to build this G3 GV11 as a G3, sort of. And I really felt that I owed it to myself to complete that project before I got a new boat. So to do that, I had to convert this boat from an open boat with bench seats to like a runabout, with forward seats, forward controls, and kind of an open interior. So I'm going to have 4 seats, but the G3 had a center deck, which I was not going to duplicate because my boat is about a foot and something shorter than a G3, so I think I couldn't quite work in the center deck. But I would have 4 individual seats and a pass-through all the way to the stern. Now, I also intended to install a bigger engine, and to do that I'm going to change the transom to a 20-inch height so I can use long shaft motors. I also decided to add strakes to the bottom of the hull. This would strengthen the bottom and make it more viable for the higher speeds that I would be going with a bigger engine. Now to do this, I'm going to have to start by gutting the interior. Stitch and glue boats are basically built with the frames like this as an integral part of the hull. They're structural. So what I intended to do was to remove the top part of the frames. And I didn't want to weaken the hull any, so I reinforced and sistered each of the frames to make it stronger. I also had previously built a rather substantial deck all the way around the hull, which also helped it retain its shape. Now the Runabout version was going to require a foredeck, and the foredeck was, as it turned out, quite an extensive build. You'll see in the pictures that I made a kind of an egg crate construction, and the shape of the bow a foredeck would conform to the shape of the bow, which got a little tricky. But in the end, I made it way stronger than it needs to be. I can stand on that deck and even jump up and down. It won't even move. So it turned out to be a very substantial build, but it worked. The first engine I put on my newly completed GV11 Plus G3 version was a 1984 Johnson 30, a two-stroke long shaft electric starting. I got this engine from a man who had a side business in rebuilding small outboards and selling them. He said he'd been through this engine, new water pump, fuel pump, point plug condenser, carb rebuild with new valves, reed valves, and he'd run it for a couple of months, and he said it was fine. So it sounded good. Traded in my 15 horse Johnson and some cash, and installed the engine. So I took it out and tried it, and after some teething problems getting everything adjusted and set up properly, I was quite happy with this and was looking really forward to enjoying this. Unfortunately, the second time out, the starter decided it wasn't going to play the game anymore and separated itself from the engine. So one of the bolts that hold the starter in place goes right into the case. The case is very thin there. The bolt pulled out, and basically I couldn't get the starter to work anymore. So it meant a fix that cost way more than the motor was worth. So the engine became useless to me. The whole affair with the J30 probably ran close to 2 months from start to finish, and it's very frustrated for the delay and, of course, the extra money, etc. Decided to just bite the bullet and go out and get a new engine. I picked the Honda 40. It was the smallest fuel-injected engine that Honda offered. It had a 4-stroke engine, power, trim, and tilt. It was really a very nice modern engine. Overall, I'm glad I made the decision to do that. It turned out to be an extremely nice engine and worked very well on this boat. Well, my friends, that's the story of my GV11 Plus. It's been a big part of my life for quite a few years. I'm still enjoying it, and I expect to enjoy it for a long time more. If you like this video, hit the subscribe button, and I'm going to be posting more videos of all my boats, so you'll be notified when they occur. And in the meantime, let's just go boating.